Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the world you live in has been designed not for your freedom, but for your obedience. Think about that for a moment. What if the majority of humans are not chained by force, but by systems so subtly constructed that people actually pay to maintain their own imprisonment? In this video, we will explore the profound and uncomfortable reality behind how 99% of humanity pays to remain enslaved. By the end of this journey, you will see that the most important and powerful revelation is kept for last, and it might change the way you look at society, your life, and the world forever. The topic we explore today speaks directly to thoughtful minds, to people who question, who observe, who refuse to accept reality at surface level. Throughout time, philosophers, psychologists, historians, and great thinkers have tried to expose the structures that hold humanity in invisible chains. From Plato describing the cave, where people live chained to illusions, to the words of Aldous Huxley, who warned that the perfect dictatorship would have people love their servitude, the message has echoed across centuries. The greatest prisons are the ones we cannot see. Before we continue, take a moment and subscribe to this channel, like this video, comment and share. What we are about to discuss contains revelations that most people will never be exposed to, and understanding them may forever shift how you see the systems that shape human existence. Now ask yourself something. If humanity is largely unfree, where is the prison? Where are the bars? Where are the guards? If there are no chains, why do so many remain stuck, overworked, underpaid, emotionally exhausted and mentally controlled? That is the uncomfortable brilliance of the systems in which we live. The chains are psychological, cultural, economic, and social. They are invisible, and yet they dictate how we think, how we behave, how we vote, how we dream, how we consume, how we spend, and even how we define success. The first mechanism that humanity pays for is the illusion of choice. Modern societies give the impression that we can choose freely, but in reality, most paths have already been pre-designed. From the moment a child enters school, they are guided along a standardized path meant to mold them into a functional unit of productivity. The education system does not exist to create thinkers, but workers. It was shaped during the industrial era with one purpose: to produce obedient minds capable of sustaining the economy, not questioning it. People are told to study hard, get good grades, get a job, follow the rules, retire at the end of life and hope for freedom in old age. But what kind of freedom can remain after a lifetime of mental conditioning? The philosopher Michel Foucault warned that modern society no longer needs metal bars. It is built on invisible systems of observation and normalization. Humans police themselves, regulate themselves, compare themselves, punish themselves. They conform not out of fear of punishment, but to avoid social exclusion, and for the privilege of participating in this structure, they pay. They pay with their time, their emotional energy, their creativity, and often their health. They pay financially too, through taxes, through consumption, and through debt. Have you ever stopped to reflect on how much of your income is not truly yours? How much work you must do to keep a system running that rarely gives you anything back besides survival? The second mechanism is consumer identity. Instead of discovering who they are, most people are given an identity ready-made by the market. You are what you wear, what you drive, what you buy, what you watch, what you own. Human beings spend endless amounts of money trying to fill a psychological void that advertising and mass culture are designed never to let them fill. The psychologist Erich Fromm argued that modern humans have abandoned being for having and doing. Instead of developing the inner world, most people become desperately attached to the external world of possessions. This creates a population that consumes but never questions why they consume. And this consumer identity makes people easier to control. A person defined by external validation can be manipulated by the fear of losing status, acceptance, or image. Society teaches people to compete in a race without ever asking who built the race in the first place. Think deeply here. When was the last time you bought something because you genuinely wanted it, not because you felt pressured by the expectations of society? How much of your life has been chosen by you, and how much has been chosen for you? In the coming segments, we will explore the other mechanisms that maintain this silent enslavement, and the final one will be the most impactful of all. But for now, reflect on this single question. If you were truly free, how different would your life look? If the first chains are forged through education and consumer identity, the next layer of silent enslavement comes from the economic systems that govern society. Imagine living in a world where people are told they are free, yet most spend the majority of their waking lives working just to stay afloat. People work to pay rent or a mortgage, to pay bills, to pay interest, to pay taxes, to pay for products and services that often exist not for their well-being, but to keep the system functioning. Think deeply. Is that freedom, or is it a well-designed cycle where individuals pay for the very structures that keep them tied down? The economist John Kenneth Galbraith once noted that modern capitalism relies on the creation of necessary illusions, meaning the majority must believe that the structure is natural and unchangeable. But history tells a different story. Money, banks, debt, and most economic institutions are human inventions, and yet today they are treated as inevitable, as if they were laws of nature. Most people are never taught how the economy truly works. They are taught how to be workers, consumers, and taxpayers, not how wealth is created or controlled. And because of that lack of understanding, the cycle continues. Debt is perhaps the most powerful of these systems. It turns people into lifetime laborers. Many start adulthood already in debt and spend decades trying to escape it. Mortgages, student loans, credit cards, business loans, vehicle financing, they all create a future that is already sold before it arrives. Take a moment to consider, how many people do you know who are working not to build their life, but to catch up with what they owe? How many dreams have been delayed, eliminated, or forgotten because debt consumed the space where freedom could have existed? And yet society teaches that debt is normal, inevitable, and even a mark of responsibility. This is the brilliance of the modern system. Instead of being forced to work, people are convinced to sign themselves into lifelong labor. Michel Foucault argued that modern systems of control do not need physical force because the perfect captive is the one who watches himself. People push themselves to exhaustion to meet the expectations of a society that measures success by productivity and financial output. They do not rest because they fear falling behind. They work longer hours because they believe it is the only way to survive. The system does not even need to punish them. Their fear and insecurity are enough. But the brilliance of this economic structure goes deeper. The time people spend chasing money is time they cannot spend on self-discovery, personal growth, family, community, creativity, or independent thinking. A human being who has no time to think will rarely rebel, question, or expand their consciousness. Ancient philosophers understood this well. Aristotle wrote that the foundation of freedom was skole, time for reflection, contemplation, and inner cultivation. But in the modern world, even weekends have become a space for consumption, errands, and distraction. The average person rarely experiences true stillness, and distraction is no accident. Another element of the silent enslavement of humanity is the constant flood of information and entertainment designed not to enlighten, but to occupy the mind. People scroll endlessly, watch passively, argue about trivial matters online, while the foundations of their lives remain unquestioned. The Roman Empire used the strategy of bread and circus. Give the people food and entertainment, and they will never notice the machinery of power. Today, the circus has become digital. Think carefully. How many hours have been taken from you by screens, notifications, timelines, content that adds nothing to your life but keeps your attention locked away? The psychologist Carl Jung warned that modern humans are not suffering from lack of information, but from lack of meaning. And yet, meaning is difficult to pursue when individuals are exhausted from work, indebted, and mentally overloaded with distractions. It becomes easier to follow the script handed to them than to design a life of their own. And this keeps people predictable, manageable, and profitable. A population that is tired will spend money to feel better. A population that is insecure will consume to feel valuable. A population that is unsure of itself will follow the norms of society rather than explore its own potential. And in this way, humanity participates in its own oppression. The majority pays financially to maintain the very systems that shape their limitations, but they also pay with something far more valuable, their inner freedom. And here is a question that deserves deep contemplation. When was the last time you made a decision that was truly yours, not influenced by tradition, expectation, fear, or social pressure, but solely rooted in your authentic self. In the next segment, we will explore an even more profound layer of this invisible system, how narratives, beliefs, and identities handed down through culture and society shape the inner world of individuals, often without their awareness. And the most powerful revelation of all still lies ahead. If economic pressure shapes the external world, the next form of human enslavement operates on a deeper and more subtle level, the inner world of beliefs, identity, and psychological conditioning. Most people do not realize that long before they reach adulthood, their perception of reality has already been programmed. They inherit beliefs, values, fears, ideologies, and assumptions about life that they never chose consciously. They learn how to behave, who to trust, what to desire, what success means, what happiness looks like, what is possible and what is not, without ever questioning the origins of these ideas. And because these beliefs feel natural, most never recognize them as the mental walls they truly are. Philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau wrote that man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. Those chains are not only in institutions, governments, or corporations, they are in the mind. The greatest prison is the one built inside a person before they are old enough to see the bars. A child arrives in the world with limitless imagination, creativity, curiosity, and a sense of wonder. But over time, society teaches them to limit themselves. They are told to sit still, be silent, follow directions, think inside the lines, and conform to the expectations of the group. Eventually, they learn to police themselves, to punish themselves, and to doubt their own inner voice. By the time adulthood arrives, most people no longer need external control. They have absorbed the control into their identity. The result is a population that follows unwritten rules, not because they are forced to, but because they believe that deviation means failure, rejection, or danger. They fear judgment, fear uncertainty, fear change, fear disapproval, and so they remain in the invisible boundaries drawn around them by culture and tradition. Psychologist Abraham Maslow observed that humans are often more afraid of their potential greatness than of their limitations. True power requires responsibility, and responsibility requires awareness. But awareness is uncomfortable. It means recognizing how much of life has been spent running on someone else's script. It means admitting that what we call our beliefs may not be ours at all, but the result of lifelong conditioning. Consider how society defines success. People are expected to prove their worth through achievements, productivity, performance, and external validation. Status becomes a currency of identity. But who defined that paradigm? Who decided that a person's value should be measured by output rather than by wisdom, compassion, character, or the depth of their inner world? Throughout history, great thinkers such as Leo Tolstoy and Henry David Thoreau warned that modern humans confuse the appearance of life with life itself. They chase symbols of success rather than understanding the essence of living. And because these beliefs are reinforced everywhere, in school, media, family, workplace, religion, and social environments, people rarely step outside them long enough to question whether they are true. If you were born in a different country, surrounded by different schools, different customs, different social pressures, different expectations, would you think and believe the same way you do today? If not, then how many of your beliefs are truly your own? Another powerful form of identity-based control is tribal thinking. People instinctively group themselves into categories: nationality, ideology, religion, profession, social class, and countless labels. These labels provide a sense of belonging, but they also create division, loyalty to external authority, and automatic conflict. When individuals identify too deeply with a group, they begin to outsource thinking to the group. We believe this. We stand for that. People like us do X. And once the group defines reality, individuals stop thinking independently. George Orwell warned that the greatest threat to freedom is not tyranny, but the loss of independent thought. When a society conditions people to feel rather than think, react rather than reflect, and follow rather than question, the chains become internal. People can be manipulated through emotional triggers, narratives, political slogans, marketing campaigns, or moral messaging without ever realizing that their reactions are not fully their own. And again, people pay for this mental prison. They pay with their peace, because conflicting beliefs create inner turmoil. They pay with their authenticity, because conformity requires self-abandonment. They pay with their potential, because fear of judgment keeps them from exploring who they truly are. And they pay financially, because identity-driven consumption is one of the most profitable tools ever created. People buy not because they need, but because the market has convinced them that certain products will complete their identity, enhance their status, or make them acceptable. Now reflect deeply. Who would you be if you were born with no labels, no expectations, no inherited beliefs? What would you care about? What would you pursue? How would you define yourself? The most powerful systems of control in history are not maintained by governments, banks, armies, or corporations. They are maintained by the beliefs individuals hold about themselves and about the world. And in the final part of this video, we will explore the most profound truth of all, the ultimate reason why 99% of humanity remains enslaved, and the one thing that can break every chain, both internal and external, for those who dare to awaken. We have reached the deepest and most uncomfortable revelation of all, the one that ties every previous layer together and explains why 99% of humanity remains bound to invisible chains while believing they are free. The final and most powerful truth is this: most individuals are enslaved not by systems, not by governments, not by corporations, not even by culture, but by their own unconscious minds. The world does not need to keep people asleep if people choose not to wake up. Throughout history, brilliant minds have warned humanity that the greatest battle is internal. Carl Jung stated that until a person makes the unconscious conscious, it will direct their life, and they will call it fate. This single sentence reveals the core of the human dilemma. If a person does not understand how their own mind works, how belief, fear, memory, trauma, desire, ego, and social conditioning shape their perspective, then they cannot truly choose their life. They live reactively, automatically, and predictably, and a predictable population is the easiest to control. Think about it. If a mind is conditioned to obey, to compare, to fear judgment, to follow authority, to trust the group over the self, to seek external validation, then no chains are necessary. Such a person will limit themselves. They will self-doubt. They will silence their inner voice. They will defend the very system that restricts them, because they cannot imagine life outside it. There is a prison outside, but the lock is on the inside. And the most powerful institutions of the world understand this. They do not need to control people physically. They only need to influence their perception. If you can shape a person's beliefs, you can shape their decisions. If you shape their decisions, you shape their behaviors. If you shape their behaviors, you shape their destiny. This is why Plato warned that the greatest form of ignorance is believing illusions are reality. People who live in mental illusions will defend their delusions without realizing they are doing so. So humanity continues working, consuming, competing, comparing, and performing, because that is the version of life they have been presented with. And because most individuals never master their inner world, they continue to pay the price, mentally, emotionally, financially, and spiritually. They pay with stress, with anxiety, with burnout, with unfulfilled dreams, with relationships that never grow, with potential that never manifests. They pay with lifetimes spent seeking the permission to be themselves. This is the deepest tragedy of the human condition. The majority will never experience true freedom because they do not realize they are prisoners. However, here lies the essential turning point. Systems of control are powerful only when individuals remain unaware. The moment a person begins to question, observe, and awaken, the walls begin to crack. When someone recognizes that the beliefs in their mind may not be their own, when they see that their fears are inherited, when they realize that identity was shaped by external forces, something profound happens. The individual begins to reclaim authority over themselves. This is why Socrates said that the greatest journey is not to travel the world, but to know oneself. Self-knowledge is the doorway to liberation, because once a human being understands how they were shaped, they can reshape themselves. When a person becomes conscious of their conditioning, they can decide what stays and what must be discarded. When they awaken to the illusions of society, they can step outside them. When they stop reacting and start observing, they gain a perspective that cannot be controlled. This internal awakening is so powerful that even the external world loses its grip. A person who knows who they are cannot be manipulated by advertising that tells them who they should be. A person who understands their value does not need validation from society. A person who sees through political narratives cannot be divided by them. A person who has found inner peace cannot be controlled through fear, and a person who takes responsibility for their mind stops being a product of the world and begins shaping their world consciously. The philosopher Krishnamurti once said that it is not a sign of health to be well-adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Humanity has adapted to stress, competition, rush, numbness, distraction, and emptiness, as if they were normal conditions of life. But what if they are not natural? What if they are symptoms of a collective spiritual sleep? Now imagine a world where individuals awaken to their own minds, where education teaches critical thinking and self-awareness instead of obedience, where work is a choice, not a lifelong sentence, where consumption is conscious, not compulsive, where identity is an expression of the soul, not a product of marketing, where freedom is defined not by the absence of chains, but by the presence of inner clarity. Ask yourself right now, what would happen if everyone suddenly understood their own power? What would happen if billions of people stopped carrying the mental programs handed to them since childhood and began living from conscious intention? The truth is, the world would transform beyond recognition, and that is why this final point is the most powerful of all. The last and greatest form of enslavement is internal, and the only key that can unlock the chains is awareness. The moment a person becomes conscious, the prison begins to dissolve. The cages of fear weaken, the illusions of identity fade. The systems that once controlled them lose their power, and for the first time, the individual opens their eyes not to the world as they were told it is, but to the world as it truly is. Freedom is not given, it is realized. And the journey begins not out there, but within. Thanks for looking.